Hello there. Welcome to Book Talk. This is your host, Anthony Moirore. At Book Talk, we get to have an author come and tell us about his book or her book. And today we have a special guest who is going to tell us about a book he's written. And the book is titled Athletes Who Rock. But I'm not going to talk about it without having the guest on our show. And here he is. Welcome, Motez Bishara. Hi.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for getting me on the show to talk about the book. Here it is. This is the cover. Um, Let me know what you would like to know about it, and I'm happy to give you a description, and we can get into some Q&A.
Yes, welcome. And it's such an honor to give us this opportunity to come and listen to you talk about this wonderful book. When was it written?
Sure. So I began the project back in at the end of 2017. So it's
Mm-hmm.
been a 4-year labor of love. The 3 years, effectively 2018, 2019, and 2020, were spent interviewing and researching the book. And last year, 2021, was done most of the editing and the photo editing for the book, and the production and the sort of graphic layout and stuff like that. It is an extremely photo rich book. Let me get
Okay.
some of the
Mm-hmm.
photos in the in here so you can see. There's 58 photos in total, so quite a lot of work putting together the photography. Many of the photos I took myself, this one not being one of them, of Damian
Okay.
Lillard. Um, and so it was a combination of finding photos on photo banks and also doing, taking some of the photography, editing some of the photography which I took, like this one of former NFL player and country music singer Kyle Turley.
Oh, beautiful. The book is talking about athletes who rock. But then, before we go deeper into it, because we are going to go a bit deep and you're going to tell us some stories, we like stories. But before we go there, we'd like to have a story of the author. I mean, where do you
Oh,
come from? Where did you grow? And then, what
sure.
brought you to the interest of sports and music?
Okay. So
Yeah.
I grew up in New York City.
Hmm.
I was a big and still am a huge New York Yankees baseball fan. That's my team.
Okay.
And I went to university in Boston. And so that's a huge sports town. Both New York and Boston are very, very big sports towns.
Okay.
Uh, while I was in university, I remember watching an NBA game, and there was a player named Wayman Tisdale who played forward for the Sacramento Kings and Phoenix Suns and some other teams. And I was watching the game, and the broadcaster said that Wayman Tisdale was also a professional bass player.
Mm-hmm.
So he had his own jazz band. He played at a very high level of bass, and he played. He was one of the best players in the NBA in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was an extremely cool thing that this one person could be a professional in two of my dream professions. One being athletics, NBA,
Yeah.
and one being a jazz musician.
Mm-hmm.
Two areas that are extremely competitive and extremely difficult to get a foot in, and yet this man was able to do both.
Mm-hmm.
So it piqued my interest, and not long afterwards, a few years later, uh, a young came onto the scene. His name was Bernie Williams, and Bernie Williams is featured
Mm-hmm.
in my book. He is also a wonderful jazz guitarist. In fact, he collaborated with Wayman Tisdale on a song. And Bernie Williams played for the Yankees. He played center field for the Yankees for 16 years. He's one of my favorite all-time players. He grew up in Puerto Rico, going to performing arts school in Puerto Rico, learning the guitar and other instruments. And he
Yeah.
would play baseball and track and field in the evening. So he was extremely disciplined. He got signed by the Yankees at age 17. The day after he graduated from high school, he went to join the Yankees minor league system. And all the while, his mother, who was a high school principal, um, enrolled him in medical school in Puerto Rico because he had the grades to do it.
Okay.
And so he would go back and forth between playing minor league baseball for the Yankees and trying to complete his medical school education in Puerto Rico. After 3 semesters, he decided it was he couldn't do both at an extremely high level, so he put his medical degree on pause, focused full time on the Yankees, and just became a legendary player.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I'm talking about Bernie Williams is because Bernie Williams piqued my interest in thinking, wow, okay, this great player for the Yankees is also an extremely accomplished musician. Who else is out there who can do this? And so I compiled a list and did some research, and I found 15 incredibly talented athlete musicians from different sports, different musical genres. Men, women, different nationalities. And I interviewed all 15 of them at length and found out their stories and what makes them tick on the
Uh-huh.
field, on stage, in the musical studio, in practice, and in all forms of life, in business and other areas of life, because they're all extremely accomplished, successful people. So that was my introduction into this concept, and it became a labor of love and an obsession of mine for 4 years.
That was good. And so to get the picture clear, all the 15 of them are both sportsmen and musicians at the same time.
Yes, and sports women.
And sportswomen. Okay,
Yes,
that
and
was good.
musicians at the same time. Absolutely.
That's wonderful. And what in your experience, in your research, what binds the two together? If we can start there,
hmm
what
There,
binds them
there.
together?
Yes. So there are a number of points that they have in common.
Mm-hmm,
Being at a very high level musically and a high level athletically requires some things that are pretty obvious. One, you have to be very dedicated. You have to put in the hours.
mm-hmm,
As one of my interviewees, Mark Butcher, the England cricketer, told me, you can't get bored easily.
mm-hmm.
You can't just get bored and give up something. If you want to learn how to play the piano, you're gonna have to do like the basic skills and learn the scales and learn the ins and outs of being a musician
Yeah.
before you can really play beautiful concert music. And it's
Uh-huh.
the same if you want to be a cricketer or a baseball batter. You really have to put a lot of hours in, not just hand-eye coordination and the mechanics of hitting, but also your strength and conditioning and body work, and make sure your diet is good and you go to sleep early. And so you have to have the discipline, and you have to have the ability to focus on something. Uh, Beyond that, there are other things that are maybe a little less obvious that they have in common. For instance, if you there's scientific research has shown that if you're an adolescent in your early teens
Mm-hmm,
and you learn how to improvise musically,
mm-hmm.
it could be in hip hop, rap, or it could be playing piano or trumpet or any kind of instrument, really, singing. If you learn how to improvise, then your brain develops this cognitive ability to make quick decisions on the go, as though you're an athlete, let's say a point guard in basketball. Moving the fast break, you don't really have time to think. You have to instinctively know where to pass the ball and make a decision. It's the same in football. If you're a midfielder or a winger, you've got to kind of make very split second or fraction of a second decisions.
Yeah.
It's been scientifically proven that studying music and improvisation at a young age helps you do that. So there are other links to the two worlds besides hard work and physical ability.
Mm. In your interviews, do you basically focus on finding out these qualities and these principles of the athletes, or is it on a story format? Because we are talking of stories of sacrifice, setbacks, success, and in sports and music and life. Or do you have a whole story of how the person grew up, the experiences that you've had along the path, or she has had along the path of his growth? What's the format of their stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to take my time with these interviews. The shortest one was probably about an hour or so, and they range up to 3 hours.
Hmm.
So we do really get into in-depth conversations of their upbringing. We always do talk about upbringing, and all of them have different kinds of upbringings. The basketball player Ronnie Cycli,
Yeah.
he grew up in Beirut during the Civil War in Beirut in the early to mid 70s.
Hmm.
And in fact, his family moved to Athens, where you are.
Yeah.
And he became a star basketball player at the American Community School in Athens and Glafada,
Hmm.
where my high school in Kuwait, we used to play them in basketball. I went to the
Okay.
American School of Kuwait when I was a little older.
Uh-huh.
So I'm very familiar with his high school. So that was quite cool that we had that in common. But he told me some memories of growing up at that time, some difficult times that he and his family had, as well as his thoughts about being the first Arab-born player, first Middle Eastern-born player playing in the NBA, and racial prejudices that he had to face.
Hmm.
So we do get into all different kinds of issues beyond just sports and music. We talk about mental health issues that my interviewees have faced. We talk about bigotry. We talk about broken homes and all kinds of harsh conditions and things that they had to persevere to become successful in their fields.
Ah. Now, talking about perseverance or the challenges that people face as they are growing up and in sports, in music, or in studying, what's the general picture of all those that you've interviewed of how they dealt with the challenges, or what part of life challenges played in their lives?
Well, they all have different stories. I can't really say all the stories are the same because, there are everybody had different ways of dealing with their own issues. I have one interviewee, Kyle Turley, who is a former NFL player, and he dealt with a lot of head injuries in the NFL.
Uh-huh.
If you follow the NFL, you'll know head injuries are a huge, huge issue in the sport.
Yeah, sure.
And although the league has tried to do what it can to make the sport safer, it is ultimately an extremely dangerous sport.
Mm-hmm.
So he came out of I think he played for about 10 years as an offensive lineman, and he estimated that he had approximately 100 concussions
Mm.
during his time. And, this leads to a degenerative brain disease among many, more than 100 NFL players who
Yeah.
have died, have later had their heads scanned and been diagnosed with CTE, a degenerative brain disease.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying he has CTE, but he certainly had issues, depression issues, rage issues, epileptic fits after his NFL career. Music was one thing that helped him get through it because of the discipline that music offered. The discipline of being in a band, which he likened to being an offensive lineman in the NFL, where five guys have to hold their own and pull their weight, and you have to rely on each other, and it's all about teamwork.
Uh-huh.
And also the discipline of going on the road, being on stage at a certain hour, going back to the hotel, packing your things, going to the airport. And so, because he traveled with some of the biggest bands like Leonard Skinner, George Jones, so he was an extremely successful musician, singer, and guitarist. So that was one way in which one of my interviewees dealt with their setbacks. I had another interviewee, Chelsea Grimes. She is a wonderful, very talented singer-songwriter and musician, and football player. She played for Liverpool FC Women's and Tottenham and Fulham, and then she played for Liverpool from a very young age. Uh, was then was won a songwriting competition as a
Okay.
16-year-old. The competition, I think, was hosted by Ryan Babel, a former Liverpool player who was interested in music and had a recording studio. So he had a competition. She won it, and she won a record contract. was signed to Sony at a young age, dropped her career in football, and then when the record executive who signed her was fired a few months later, she lost her contract. So
Mm.
she found herself without a football career and without a music career.
Okay.
So, which is a very tough, rejection to deal with at a young age. So she
Yeah.
traveled, persevered, decided to got an offer to come back just as a songwriter, and through hard work and fate and a little bit of luck, she started writing hit songs for big artists like Kylie Minogue and
Mm-hmm.
eventually Dua Lipa. And now she has Chelsea Grimes has more than 1 billion streams on all platforms and is one of the most in-demand songwriters in the world. And went back to playing football, so
Yeah.
she still plays football at a high level as well. And so it's everybody's got their own way, but usually music showed helped in a therapeutic way to
Okay.
bring these people back to the top of their professions. I'll give you one more example,
Okay.
or two more actually.
Yeah.
One of my interviews is Pat Bergener here.
Mm-hmm.
He's an Olympic snowboarder from Switzerland. He just actually competed in Beijing.
Okay.
So he's one of the top half-pipe snowboarders in the world. And when he was at a young age, he suffered a string of very bad injuries,
Mm.
including tearing his ACL. And so he missed out on the 2014 Olympics in Sochi and
Mm-hmm.
went into a depression, had to deal with a lot of expectations. As he told me, expectation can be like poison in sports. It can start can start corroding your confidence.
Yeah.
And so he while he was rehabilitating, picked up a guitar, started getting into music, and that kind of helped him restore his confidence and feel the creativity of making music and making something beautiful again. And when he was healthy, he was able to come back to the sport, change disciplines from big air, which is when you fly through and do flips on a ramp, to the what they call half pipe,
Okay.
and until he became, he made it to the Pyeongchang Olympics, placed fifth there, and made it to the finals just now in Beijing as well. So he's had a wonderful career. He got signed to a record deal by Universal Records, and so is doing both at a very high level. And another, I'll just give you one more example. Kevin Walker, who's a Swedish Irish footballer. He's mixed.
Okay.
He's won the league in Sweden and was the captain of Djurgården's. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing correctly. Djurgården's football club. And before that, he won the Swedish Idol competition as one of the top singer songwriter talents in Sweden. So
Mm.
like Pat Bergener, the snowboarder, Kevin Walker suffered health issues. He had a blood disease. He had to step away from the sport for a year, and also turn to music, which really helped turn his life around.
Mm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, these stories are very inspiring, and they can motivate someone into uh, great achievements in his life or her life. And now I want to imagine we are not even talking of just one story. You give us 15 stories of resilience, 15 stories of bouncing back. And I imagine those people who get to go through disease, who get to hurt, to have broken bones, and then they heal and come back on the field. That's such a great comeback. And if I may ask at this point, whom do you recommend to read this book of yours?
Oh, well, to be honest, I think this should appeal to lots of people who are interested in good stories of human perseverance. It's a very motivational book because all these people really were underdogs in their life.
Yeah.
Damian Lillard, who's probably one of the most well-known athletes in the world.
Hmm.
Damian Lillard, grew up as many NBA players have, grew up from very modest backgrounds in inner cities. But he, unlike most NBA players, was a completely unheralded basketball player from throughout high school and most of the way through college. He was not very well known.
Yeah.
In fact, when he was a sophomore in high school, he he didn't play a single minute of high school basketball in his high school in Oakland,
Mm-hmm.
and his coach laughed at him when he told his coach that he wanted to be an NBA player.
Mm-hmm.
So he is a good example of somebody who has really persevered and made it despite his modest size for a basketball player, his modest upbringing, and being overlooked by all the big colleges until he became Rookie of the Year in the NBA. Incredibly, in 2012, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
or 2013. Yeah, somebody's asking where they can buy the book,
Oh,
and
yeah, that's good. Yes.
yeah, uh, any major book-selling website, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all of them should have it.
Yes. So yeah, that's Joanna. Thank you for that answer. Yeah, Joanna, you can get the book on Amazon or any major bookstores. We
And
also,
my from my publisher, Cranthorpe Milner, as well. I
yes,
need to
and thank
plug
you very
them as well.
much for pointing that out, because we have several other viewers who are there. We would like to thank each and every one of you who is watching live. And Sohel, thank you for the compliment. He's commenting on the other side, and he's saying very good. He enjoys the interview, and definitely the stories that you tell about the book. And those who get to listen even after the interview is over on the other podcast platforms that we share it on, uh, thank you very much for being our guest. And Joanna is still asking a question. Do they ship in Greece? Yes, they
Uh, I,
do.
yes, I'm pretty certain they do. A friend of mine just bought it in Cyprus, so I think Greece should be okay.
They do, because I've been buying books from Amazon and they ship in Greece. And actually, my book is on the way coming from. I haven't read it. It's on the way coming.
Okay,
Yes,
terrific. Well,
and
it makes a great gift as well because it's quite a chunky book.
mhm,
And as I said, I have to plug in the photos. It's quite a lot. This is Bernie Williams, who I was talking
okay,
about. So
uh-huh,
the photos are, I worked hard on the photos. They're
okay.
beautifully sourced and very nicely placed in the book as well. So it's quite a cool gift to somebody who's into sports or music or just good human stories.
Yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful book. We can
Thank you.
already tell from these stories that you tell us. Now, going back a bit, you talked about. Okay, I talk it about it because I'm here, and Joanna is also from Greece. Greece, I think, is a great grooming ground. You may be aware of the story of Yanis and Dokubo.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Because he also came to Athens, Greece. He grew. He was an underdog. He's from Nigeria. I mean, his parents are from Nigeria. He came here in Athens, Greece, and he was working his way out in life, because they didn't afford even. They didn't have jobs. The parents didn't have jobs. He had to sell in the street, and
yeah.
then he used to practice. No, that's the only thing now in relation to what we are talking about. I'm not so sure that he plays an instrument.
I don't know. I'm not sure. He maybe be a rapper or a singer because a number of NBA guys are, but very few of them are able to take it to another level where they're at a professional level like Damian Lillard.
Yeah, and now talking of taking it to another level, because I think what is required in taking something to another level is a matter of focus. Now, isn't it a big challenge to those people that you've interviewed that they would focus on two different things and excel in both of them?
To me, it seems like it's a huge challenge. But when you ask them, they if you're very 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 interested in something, you just give it your all. And so for them, it's all about time management.
Okay.
You put in the hours and you get the results. And here's the thing about being an athlete. I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
is a limited amount of hours you can put into training without sort of overdoing it,
Yeah.
right? Especially so in the off season, you're training a lot as an
Mm-hmm.
NBA player or an NFL player or whatnot. But during the season, you have to rest your body as a footballer as well.
Yeah.
So you're playing the matches, you're training a little bit, but you also have to get a lot of rest. And one great way to do something productive while you're resting is to work on music and learn how to play an instrument or learn how to sing or learn how to use DJ equipment or something like that. A lot of them, as we know, a lot of people just play video games.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these athletes take the video games to their hotel rooms and whatever, and they play each other, and that's fine too. But a lot of them don't want to play video games as well. They want to do something a little more productive with their time, whether it's investments. They learn how to invest in stock market or in cryptocurrency or in real estate or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or play an instrument or do something a little more academic. So for them, it's literally all about time management.
And thank you for pointing out something there about investments, and because this was the question that was coming next. And I see the beauty in combining the two, sports and music. But the question is coming in here because you've interviewed with so many athletes who are retired. I've had some stories, maybe back in Kenya where I come from, or other places, where we have some sportsmen play or are active in sports. And we all know that you can't be active in sports for 50, 60 years. So you have a short time frame to gather what you have to gather, maybe to amass some wealth. And what stories have you covered of those who have retired and how they've been able to deal with that? Now, with yours, I know there's a good thing with the transitioning from sports and music, but then we could need some advice or some insight on how to deal with the retirement from sports.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so music was definitely helpful for a number of them to give them something very positive to transition to, and most of them, all of them, in fact, were interested in music during their careers. So it wasn't like they had to start from zero and learn something right after, but it enabled them
Yeah.
to have something positive to turn to rather than have this huge vacuum after having sports encompass their lives.
Uh-huh.
And so Bernie Williams told me this, the Yankees legend. He said that for him, uh, he didn't have to. He saw a lot of his colleagues struggle after being in the limelight with the Yankees, and then retiring and not knowing what to do with their lives. So they come back and try and be a coach or a commentator, but
Mm-hmm.
there's not enough roles for every retired baseball player to be a coach or a commentator. So
Sure.
some of them struggle after, but he said I never had to do that. I never had to try and fight my way to get a career back into baseball because I had music.
Uh-huh.
And he even went back and studied music formally at the Manhattan School of Music and got a bachelor's degree in musicianship.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's one great example. I mean, some of them, like Pat Nevin, the former Chelsea Player of the Year, and Daniela Hachikova, the tennis great from Slovakia, both of them are announcers, they're broadcasters who also balance their musical interests with being television and podcast personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yes, music has definitely been a helpful way to transition out of their sports careers when their bodies physically gave out. I will mention one more thing though, because when you're a sports figure and you transfer to, let's say, business, or if you have a string of auto dealerships or something like that, you don't run into these issues of people thinking that you're not qualified or that
Mm-hmm.
you're not fit to make it. But
Yeah.
if you're an ex-athlete and you want to, you're going up and you're rapping or you're being a singer, automatically people are going to think, who is this person?
Mm-hmm.
That guy's a boxer. That guy's not a a singer, or that person, she was a tennis player. Why is she trying to be a pianist? And why am I going to pay to listen to her play, play an instrument? Or so they all deal with skepticism on a very
Okay.
high level simply because of the fact that they were famous athletes before.
Mhm.
So they've had to work two or three times as hard to make it as musicians, and some of them, Ronnie Cycli, the basketball player, he said that he when he started out DJing in Miami, he would pretend like he was not him, even though he's almost 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
He'd say like, "No, no, I'm not him. I'm not Ronnie Cycli. I'm his brother or his cousin." Yeah, because he didn't want people to just project the skepticism and negativity towards him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And we are very honored and we appreciate you being on our show. We are just about coming to the end of this show. But once again, we would like to thank also the viewers and the listeners, those who are commenting. We have a Facebook user who says music gives a lot of discipline. So training on it requires commitment and concentration, and therefore a great idea.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
that's
you.
true, and that's the same for sports as well. You want to be one of the world's best tennis players or golfers or basketball players. It also requires a lot of training and commitment.
Yeah.
Uh, so it is very similar in those respects.
And
And
uh,
I think Joanna
yes, Joanna has
was
a question. The book
yeah.
talks about the athlete's life, or is it general information? Maybe you can answer that before we.
Sure. So there are 15. It's a collection of interviews. I should make that clear.
Yeah.
There are 15 interviews, and they're in question and answer format. So it's each chapter has an introduction discussing that person's life.
Okay.
And then it goes into the question and answer section. So we discuss the lives of these athletes from a music perspective, from a sports perspective, and just from a general life perspective. All other things they've had to deal with in life. But there's also an introduction that talks about the history of athletes performing music. There's a photo of Shaquille O'Neal as a DJ, the former NBA great. There's
Uh-huh.
also one of my favorite pictures. I don't know if you can see here. This is Muhammad Ali singing with the legendary singer Sam Cooke.
Okay.
Um, and so I go into the history of that. And then there's another chapter which precedes the interviews, which talks about what makes an elite performer. And I go into all the psychological elements of top level performing, whether it's in sports, music, or in other facets of life.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. It's been such an honor that you've been here, and thank you for giving us an introduction into the book. And we are just about signing off from Book Talk today. But before we go, always at Book Talk, we'd like the author to leave us with a few words to remember. Always remember. Now it's your time, Motez.
Oh, thank you very much. The few words to remember, I would say, probably in the words of Pat Bergener. He uttered one of my most favorite lines, I guess, in the Q&A, and he said, people ask me, how do you have time for all this? Or, why are you in such a hurry to get out all this music and do all this, all your athletic endeavors in the Olympics and on the slopes? And he says, there's no why. For me, this is natural. What are you waiting for? People put boundaries for themselves and say, I have to wait, I can't do this. And he says, no, why do you have to wait? Just go out and do it. And I like that attitude, just go out and
Mhm.
do it. If you want to do something, put your mind to it, put the work in and go out there. Don't let anybody's words create any self-doubt in you. If you want to write a
Mm,
book, if you want to interview cool people, famous people, people who have done remarkable things on the field and in music, you can absolutely do it. you
mm.
know
Just do
Write
it.
your own book as well, just do it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much, Motez. It's been such an honor, and we wish that many people get to read the book and get the stories and the lessons and the inspiration that is contained in the book, Athletes Who Rock by Motez Bishara. Thank
Thank
you
you. Take
and
care.
have a great time. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, bye.